be. We're very glad to have you join us for another installment of our Talking Archaeology summer lecture series. Tonight we're going to be learning about canal boats from Taylor Picard, who I have to point out, whose last presentation in this series was also in the middle of a thunderstorm. So there seems to be a theme going on here. We're going to be learning about all kinds of interesting canal boat facts. As I'm sure you're probably aware, if you've spent any time at the Maritime Museum, we have a plethora of canal boat shipwrecks in Lake Champlain. It's by far the most common vessel type that we have on the bottom of Lake Champlain. So we have a really amazing sample of vessels to explore from the entirety of the canal's era. And we'll get some good information about that tonight. Along those same lines, I want to make you aware of an upcoming publication from the Maritime Museum. We're in the process of finalizing the writing of the Champlain Canal, 200 Years of Change, which will be published by the end of the year. And as part of a grant that we've got for helping us produce that volume, and I should say that volume is going to include a chapter by Taylor on canal boats, as you might imagine. We would love to have people, if you're interested in this book when it's published, please put your name and email address down here on this form, which I'll leave up at the back of the auditorium, so that we can alert you when it goes on sale. And I'm going to be brutally honest, we'd love to have some names on here so we can show our grant funder that we have people that are interested in this book. So, even if you're not really interested in the book. But it's going to be a great book. We've got authors. We've got one of the history folks from the New York State Canal. Brad Utter is writing a chapter. We have Taylor Picard. We have Paul Gates, our co-director of archaeology here at the museum, who's also writing a chapter. We also have our sailing manager, Matt Harrison, who you may have encountered, who's also quite a nautical scholar, will be producing a chapter. As well as Scott McLaughlin, who used to be an employee of the Maritime Museum and is now now the director of the Granite Museum in Barrie, is writing a chapter. He wrote his dissertation on the canal boat families and their livelihoods. And then we have an environmental perspective from Meg Modley from the Lake Champlain Basin Program to talk about how the canal has also been an avenue of transportation of both good and bad species through the canal system. So it should be a really interesting book, and I really encourage you to take a look at it when it comes out. We're excited to finally get it to hit the ground. But let's learn about canal boats tonight with Taylor. Take it away, Taylor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. So, as Chris mentioned, this is actually just going to be a tidbit of that chapter, where I look at the construction of canal boats and how we kind of learned about the different types of canal boats through history and the history of archaeology in Lake Champlain as well. So it's not just canal boats, it's a little bit of history of what we've done as the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum and the organizations that have existed before us. So I want to start off by pointing out, we're talking about a pretty specific time period, the commercial period of Lake Champlain, which is 1823-1845, which comes around right after the conflict period, as it showed how important the lake was to connecting Canada to the Hudson River. And there's a few things to note here because it does play into this whole series of events, that steamboats are first seen on the lake in 1809, and they were pretty popular around that time, so they grew and had a rapid number of steamboats seen throughout the lake. Though the ones we'll be talking about are some of the smaller ones that were not really commonly talked about in a lot of publications. And eventually this created this demand in New York to build a canal system that connects Lake Champlain to the Hudson River. And the first section is connected in 1819, which connected Fort Edward to the rest of the lake. And that's the chapter that my supervisor, Paul Gates, the co-director of archaeology, writes about. But what I look at is how the relationship between how the canal is expanded impacts the size of the canal boats, and maybe a little bit how they're built as well. But eventually this period comes to an end in the mid-20th century as railroads, highways, and the barge canal system takes over. So just to give a brief timeline, remember this image, it will be on the exam. No, don't worry about that. I have that image throughout the rest of this presentation, but it just gives you a really good comparison of the canal locks, which is the smallest part of each canal system, as they expand over time between each stage of expansion for the canal system until you get to the very end of 1916 with the barge canal system. You could just see how much larger the canal grew once it shifted to the barge canal system. So our first period is 1819, 1857. This is that first connection to Port Edward, and we immediately start seeing boats being built, and so we kind of categorize them as two separate classes. The 1823 class is very experimental. People are still really trying to figure out what they want to do. Then we have the 1841 class, where people have started to standardize. They know what to expect now. They know how to build these boats, and they know how they want them to be built. Then we go into the first canal expansion. Once the Erie Canal comes about, they decide, you know what, we also want to expand this because it's been a huge success. But it took a little bit of time, so 1858 is right around the time that that's finished, but, or started, I should say, and then it's finished in 1862, and they immediately decide, we're going to jump in and start building another one. So then we have the second canal expansion, which is to match the final canal expansion for the Erie Canal. And this is where we get our 1872 class of canal boats, which is our final class. The 1862 class is really where this standardization kind of comes full, into its full breadth. So some things to talk about. We have sailing versus standard canal boats. This is actually something when I first started here at the museum, got me a little bit confused. I didn't understand what the difference between a standard canal boat and a sailing canal boat was. A sailing canal boat is propelled on the lake by rivers and sails, but it's still pulled through the canal system by beasts of burden. But there's two different types of sailing canal boats. There's the sloop and there's the schooner. So the sloop, it has a single sail. Schooner has two or more sails, but we really only see two here on the lake. Here's an image of the General Butler painting of it by Ernie Host, and it is a schooner-rigged vessel. And then we have the standard canal boat. And this one is where I kind of got a little disconnected because it took me a while to understand why you would want a boat that has no method of self-propelling itself, no engines, no sail, anything like that. And that's because it was towed by steamboats on the lakes and the rivers, as you can see down here in this image. So as I said, steamboats became, the smaller variety became very popular on the lake very quickly, and so they would form these long trains to pull the standard canal boats, but they were still treated as the same in the rest of the canal system. So quickly talking about the early canal boat period, you can see here, this is the lock, as I mentioned. That is the smallest part of the canal system. And then here's a cross-section of what the canal actually would have looked like. And then down on bottom is roughly the approximate average dimensions of a canal boat of the 1823 class and 1841 class. So when we start, people are trying to figure out what they want to do and how they want to build these canal boats. So we saw, canal boats kind of built in all sorts of different sizes and different shapes, and people really couldn't figure out, what they wanted the canal boat to look like. They just know we wanted to be able to move cargo. And they're not necessarily all shipwrecks. So people are just sort of building whatever they can, and the best way to move goods is boxes. And this actually leads into a whole other problem because boxes are not the best thing to float through a canal system where you only have about a foot to either side of you between the wall of the canal and the boat passing you. But then we get to the 1841 class where everyone's starting to figure out what they want their boats to look like and what's the best design. And we also get some legal requirements that come down from the canal board that require some changes to be made to canal boats. So the first one we'll talk about is the canal schooner Troy. This is the earliest canal boat that we have found in Lake Champlain, and it does in fact sit like this on the lake bed, just over by Whitehall. Sorry, Westport. It was launched in 1823, and it's pretty small actually. It's only 60 feet long, 13.5 feet wide, with a depth of 3.5 to 4 feet. And it's built like a regular kind of lake schooner. It really doesn't share a whole lot of the normal characteristics that we will see later on, except two, which are of interest, especially because they occur so early. This is launched in 1823, so this is as soon as the canal is fully built. And that's the mast tabernacle here, and the the centerboard here, which you can also see deployed right here. The really nice thing is, because the way the shipwreck sits, the centerboard is actually almost fully deployed, which you don't see on those shipwrecks that have a centerboard because they're sitting flat on the bottom and the centerboard gets pushed back up. So the purpose of these two features is to make the canal boat more manageable in the canal system. Obviously, you don't need a keel in the canal system. It'll make you too deep, and you also don't need your mast because you're being pulled by a beast of burden. So they decided to create a three-sided box that allows you to lower your mast when you're going through the canal system, and then raise it again when you're on the lake or on the river. And that's the mast tabernacle here. And there'll be a better image of it later on a different shipwreck. And same thing with the centerboard. The centerboard acts as a deployable keel and provides that stability. Unfortunately, it only lasted for about 2 seasons, as it sank in 1825 just outside of Westport when a major storm broke and caused the vessel to capsize, causing the cargo to shift all to the front and dragged it straight down to the bottom of the lake. Unfortunately, none of the 5 crew members survived. You can see their names here on the screen. The Halstead brothers received a memorial in Westport, and Daniel Williams, who was the infant of John Williams at the time of the sinking, did write a poem about his father, but Jacob Pardee and Daniel Cannon didn't really have any other mentions in history beyond this, so it's actually really tragic. But in comparison to a standard canal boat, we have the Virgins, which is also just south of Westport. It's a 1823 standard canal boat. So again, it was not propelled by any means, had no sail, had no engine, so it was towed. And we do know that it broke off of the train at some point, probably during a storm, and sunk just outside of Westport. This one is about 20 feet longer, a little bit more narrow, and has about the same depth. And this is really just built like a box. They just decided we're going to try and float a box down the lake through the canal system because it can really hold the most amount of space. Boxes are great for storing things and transporting things. But what's really interesting is that Virgins does not have any frames or ribs, which you can see right here. In fact, it has a method of building either known as chine built or edge fastening. So, and it also does not have a keel. Instead, it has a sort of keelstone that's wedged between the hull planking, the ceiling planking, and some stringers here. And then it has these two outer pieces called chines that would have, all these would have ran the length of the vessel with some interruptions. And then there were the strakes to make the hull, and how they fastened these together where they would drill holes through the sides of the strake and run a giant iron spike through it. And they would fasten it all together like that. So there were absolutely no frames, which provided more space inside of the vessel for more cargo. Yeah?
What would they haul?
Oh, they would haul all sorts of goods, iron, wood, manufactured goods, coal were all big things, marble as well. Yeah, they had all sorts of different types of things that they would transport. I believe the first canal boat that came into Lake Champlain was actually transporting clams or oysters. It's one of the two. I can't remember. I think it's oysters actually. The other interesting feature is that this has what's known as a scow barge, which is a very sharp pointed bow. Sorry, it's a scow bow. Say that 10 times fast. It's a lot. There we go. So the scow bow has a flat face with sharp corners. It rises from the bottom of the hull at an angle of 45 degrees, and then the sides of the hull come and meet at a 90-degree angle. So you could see right here, we actually have a collision between a scow bow canal boat and a traditional bow canal boat. And as you can imagine, it caused a lot of damage. As we can see here, it probably is what sank these two vessels. So in 1846, the New York Canal Board decided they had enough of people sinking other canal boats by accidentally colliding into them and also gouging the sides of the canal system so that they had to be constantly repaired. And they decided, we're done with this. You can't have points on the bow of your boat anymore. There were also some other ways people tried to get around this. It was really interesting where they would put kind of bumpers on it. They didn't work either. So they just said, you know what? No, your bow has to have this, at the bare minimum, has to have this mathematical formula to operate in the canal system. Otherwise, you're paying a fee between $5 to $10 per lock. So this started kind of a.
Today.
I don't know what the inflation rate is today. It would be quite a bit of money though. I think I looked and it was like almost $500. It was quite a bit of money, yeah. So, you know, it's a very strict, as you can see, this is actually from the laws and regulations for the canals in the state of New York. And you can see that it's a very strict equation that they had to follow. And we'll take a look at some of the boats that have that later. As I mentioned, we'll see an image of the tabernacle here. So this is the Isle of Mott Canal Sloop. This fits our 1841 class, where we see the standardization come into play. And so, again, really early on, that tabernacle, mass tabernacle, is very popular, and a lot of ship captains and builders are adding it to their boats for their sailing canal boats, mostly up in the northern ports, because it was a lot more affordable for them and to transport, you know, using their own propulsion instead of paying for a steamboat to take them all the way up to the northern ports. As we can see from this one, which is sunk right off of Isle of Mott, between Isle of Mott and New York. It's actually the first sailing canal boat discovered in Lake Champlain in 1979. And it was originally thought to be a lake schooner because these early vessels sort of still had that lake schooner look to them. And it's not until they discovered the General Butler just the next year that they decided to go back and look at this wreck again and realize, wait, that's a sailing canal boat. Because General Butler is the second one that they discover. And that's when the archaeologists and historians start to do a little bit more research and realize sailing canal boats are a thing. Nobody had quite remembered that. Really interesting. Similar to General Butler, the stem post was believed to be a two-piece feature, but it actually ended up being one that would kind of make reappearances later on. Unfortunately, it couldn't be very well documented because it has a large marble block sitting right on the bow, so they did not want to go underneath that, and I can definitely understand why. That would be quite the scary dive to go document this stem post of a canal boat with a probably 4-ton piece of marble sitting above your head on a boat that's sat there for 180 years now, almost. In fact, almost a year in the day, as it sank on September 5th, 1846. Right off Bruce's point. It's interesting because we don't know the name of this wreck, but we know who the captain was and why it wrecked. It got caught in a storm, and we are able to connect it to this one because it's the only canal boat in that spot transporting the right cargo and the right time. This actually sunk in, like I said, 1846. So that makes, it kind of helps us learn that the scow bow really only affected, the regulations for the scow bow really only affected the standard canal boats because the sailing canal boats don't seem to have that style of bow. So, within 12 years of them finishing the canal system, it was incredibly popular, very lucrative, so they decided that they're going to start expanding it, and they expanded lock by lock, little by little. So they expand one lock, then they would go to the next one, expand that, and then expand the gaps in between. And you can see those measurements here, and how it relates to the the average 1862 canal boat measurements. The 1862 class actually has a pretty short-lived life. It starts in 1858 and goes to 1872. And we actually start to see a drop in sailing canal boats at this time. So it goes down to a ratio of 3 sailing canal boats for every 3 standard canal boats for every 1 sailing canal boat, due to the fact that steamboats are now using propellers instead of paddle wheels. Additionally, for the remaining sailing canal boats still operating in the lake, they're actually starting to become more schooner rigged instead of sloop rigged. We're not entirely sure on the reason why. There's a couple of hypotheses. One is that the railroads are already threatening the canal infrastructure and the amount of the material that they're able to move. Certain material is just far more popular to move on rail because of the timeliness of it. So the captains are having to think about their profit margins, and it requires fewer crew members to handle the schooner, despite the fact that it has 2 sails, because you need fewer men to handle each sail because they're smaller. Alternatively, there is the fact that the vessels are now larger and need a little bit more force to propel than the sloop rigging can handle. I said that this is probably the smallest period of the canal system because almost immediately they started working on the second canal expansion. But of this class, we have the famous General Butler, which is from, it was actually launched in 1862, which is a great coincidence, built over in Essex. The interesting thing about this one, as well as the sibling ship O.J. Walker, is that they're not edge fastened. They actually do have ribs. They have 29 frames. But we, as I mentioned, saw a unique feature in the stem post. And it appears to be that is to support having that shorter bow that is being regulated by the state of New York. So where the Isle of Mott shipwreck had a more pointed bow, standard, similar to a lake schooner, the General Butler had a bit more rounded, shorter bow to kind of create more of that box shape. General Butler has a really interesting story behind it, and I think it really speaks to how well constructed these canal boats were. So it sunk on September 9th, 1876, just outside of Burlington when a storm broke. Captain Montgomery and his crew member, his daughter, her friend, and a quarry captain who he had picked up on Isle of Mott, who was going to Burlington to receive medical care for an eye injury, were all on board. They were just outside of Burlington when the storm set upon them. They knew the storm was coming. Montgomery thought he would be able to outrun it. Unfortunately, he couldn't. And he sets the storm anchor, and they're going to try and wait out the storm when the anchor breaks. And the tiller breaks, and he then decides to cut the anchor so that they can try and ride the storm down to the south end of the breakwater. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. He tries to jerry-rig the tiller, and again, that doesn't work. And they crash into the breakwater, and it actually smashes into the breakwater over a half dozen times. Each time, one of the members jumps off. And as the legend goes, the last and final time, Montgomery, being the captain, jumps off as the last member of the crew and passengers on the boat. And as soon as he lands on the breakwater, the boat goes under and sinks.
But everybody lived.
Everybody lived, yeah. So, in a phenomenal fashion, all of Burlington's out to watch, and a man named James Wakefield, who was a ship chandler, and possibly even the creator of that flag back there, saw this happening. He was a member of the Royal Navy in the War of 1812, and saw this happen. A similar event happened on the high seas before moving to Burlington, and knew that he had to act quickly because it's December in Burlington and it's cold. And so he and son commandeer a lighthouse tender and row it out to the breakwater and rescue all 5 members of the shipwreck and bring them back to Burlington, and they all receive medical attention and survive. And that's actually where we get the James Wakefield race from. On the other hand, the standard canal boat, LA Hull, is one of the few that we have, but it also shows just that we have hit a point of standardization in the construction of the construction of canal boats. This one is 85.5 feet long, 14.75 feet wide, and 5.75 feet in depth. It was built in 1867 in Whitehall, New York. It actually had a pretty long career. It made it to 1878 when it sunk while being towed by John F. Winslow steamboat, similar to the steamboat seen here. And what had happened is that it was transporting a cargo of pig iron. When the pig iron on the deck broke free, collapsed through the deck, and then punctured the hull. The captain and his crew member I believe who was his son, saved the whole train, but unfortunately they lost the vessel, but nobody died, fortunately. Unfortunately, the vessel is in pretty deep water, and it's still full of pig iron, so there's only been so much information that we've been able to gather from this one, but from what we have been able to see, as you can see, it's, you know, split almost in half along the length of the vessel. And we're able to see that it is edge fastened, and it has that bow construction that we saw come around in the Isle of Mott sloop and General Butler. And interestingly enough, though, it the stern deploys a scow style, because the regulation said nothing about how the shape of the stern could be. So it has that sharper angle to it, because it's you know, not at risk of puncturing any ships in a collision unless it gets rear-ended, which I guess is a good safety mechanism. So then we get to the second canal expansion, which is 1873 to 1915. And you can see now that the locks have once again expanded. It's a lot faster this time around, because they're trying to quickly catch up to the expansion of the Erie Canal, which was completed in 1864. They started the expansion of this just a few years after. It only took about 9 years or so for it to be completed. And this would last until 1915, when the barge canal system was completed. It's also the last era of the wooden canal boats. At this point, railroad has come in and, you know, effectively dominated a lot of the commercial transportation of goods. So, ending the viability of sailing canal boats. We actually have historical documents that show over 50 sailing canal boats that were constructed, either of the 62 class or of the 1873 class, were then converted to be standard canal boats and had their masts removed and had some hull modifications made to open up more space. As I mentioned, the opening of the barge canal system effectively leads to the end of the canal boat era. But we have one really good example of that, which is the Sloop Island canal boat. It was, it is full of coal because of when it sunk, and it actually was a really good question from earlier about the cargo on these vessels, because a lot of time it is cargo like this that could easily shift around during transportation and destabilize the vessel, and that's what appears to have happened with the Sloop Island canal boat. Interestingly enough, Sloop Island sort of seems to be an expanded version of the LA hull. They're pretty similar in size and shape, as you can see. There's that classic regulated canal bow, but it has a scow stern, very sharp angular stern there, and it is edge fastened. But it is significantly longer. It's about 17 feet longer at 97 feet long, and 3 feet wider, and several feet deeper. So it has a lot larger cargo capacity. If I go back to this slide, I don't know why that stopped working on me. These can carry up to 2,000 pounds of capacity. Yeah. I mean, at almost 100 feet long, they are several times the length of a modern semi-truck. So they're able to transport a lot of goods. Now it takes a little bit longer. Canal systems are slow, but just thinking about being able to transport this much material from Burlington to New York City in just one vessel, it just always astounds me. I always feel flabbergasted. But what we are able to see from this wreck is that at this point in time, especially once we get to the 62 class, they figured out how they wanted to build these, and they decided that this is the way that they like them to be built. And in fact, this one we believe operated for several decades, as the artifacts on board suggest it was sunk sometime around 1915. And there was a small family on board, probably a husband, wife with a child, based off the artifact assemblage. But we don't know, who was on board, what the wreck was, when it sunk, other than what the artifacts on board tell us. I like to think that it has a very similar history to the LA Hall, where everyone was able to realize that something was happening and quickly get off board and be supported by their fellow neighbors, and their neighbors were able to save the rest of the train and them, and happily ever after, for the most part. I mean,
Do they ever have like lifeboats for?
I believe sometimes they would carry a dinghy, but I don't think I've ever seen one in the lake with one. So I don't think it was all that common. Yeah.
So the family of 3 living on this, I understand you need a crew and people to manage it, both with sailing, but these are just being towed.
Mm-hmm.
What is the function of the people on these canal boats that have no propulsion system?
Yeah, I mean, so it's basically just a businessman who is handling all of the business transactions of going through the canal system, paying the boat captain for towing the boat, paying the canal lock fees, things like that. And this, they could be owner operated, so they're on board and this is their entire livelihood. Yeah.
These do not seem suited to transporting, millions of board feet that went through the canal in the 19th century. What type of boat did they use for lumber?
You would actually be surprised. There are several images of these. Just have absolute. I think I saw one had. I'm trying to think what the number was. I was just astounded. It was dozens of cords of wood, raw lumber, on board, just stacked on the deck, because they were so buoyant. So, it'd be surprising how much they would be able to get on board.
So all those board feet went on these canal boats?
Yeah.
Even though they were designed for cargo holds?
Yep. Yeah. Well, and the cargo holds, these openings are actually quite large, so they would be able to stick some of that in the cargo hold.
Okay.
There's a question in the back.
Yeah, my wife has an ancestor back in 1870. They were living in Fort Anne, but one of the daughters was a cook on a canal boat. So what style canal boat would she have been a cook on?
What type of canal boat would she have been a cook on? Was that the question?
Right.
I don't know, but I believe, Chris, you're covering that in your talk, or something similar?
It's probably a similar boat to this.
Yeah.
Considering the time that your ancestor was alive. She probably, often by the 1870s, they were operating in pairs. A pair of standard canal boats would work together, and they would often be run by a single family unit or a small crew with, assistance in the form of a cook. And, I think what they were doing most of the time was handling lines, fending off the other vessels. In the canal system, they were sometimes still working with mules and the horses and had to keep those things going. But otherwise, that's the kind of vessel I think they would be working on by that point in the 19th century.
Thank you.
Did any of these have cruise quarters?
Yeah, they absolutely did. So this section right here would have been the cabin, and the entire family would have lived in that space. They would have had their kitchen, their bedrooms, their bathroom, everything would have been in that space. And this would have actually been on top of here with a small ladder or stairway that led into that space. Did I see one more question up in the front? Okay. Well, I really appreciate it. If you guys have more questions, I'm absolutely more than happy to answer them right now. As Chris mentioned, this is going to be a part of the book that's coming out. I go way more in depth into talking about the construction. Unfortunately, I wish I had more images to really show some of that that I could have put into this presentation, but I only have so much. But if you have more questions, please feel free to contact me. Yeah.
What do they do?
Oh, sorry. Let me go in the back here real fast first. Yeah.
What did the families of the boats do in the winter when it became?
Yeah. So they would all come together and form small communities in towns and cities, and their children would go to school and things like that. Yeah.
Did they work in town?
I'm not too familiar with that. I believe they do.
I think some of them, had crafts that they would do on the boat. Some of them probably worked on shore. They send their kids to school on shore. It was, mostly down in New York City. They would raft up into these big communities in the salt water where it didn't freeze.
Yeah, and they had musicians, they would play instruments and things like that, and there's photos of them as they're rafted up, coming together and playing music together and things like that. So they were definitely a community. It was just very interesting to think about. Sorry, I think he had the question first.
No, you were mentioning earlier about the standard canal boats would be towed by barges. Now, they would tend to tie up a whole flotilla of these and be pulled along. So if they did have an issue and were sinking, they were part of a larger group of boats. So it's not like they were out in the middle of the lake by themselves.
No, yeah. So there is stories of some canal boats that during a storm they did break off, and the standard canal boats, and they would get separated from the flotilla. One of those is the actually part of our dive preserve system, which is the coal barge, which is also believed to be possibly the AR noise. So if it is a separate one, then we have two great stories of that exactly happening to two separate wrecks. It is possible that they're the same, but we haven't been able to connect those two just yet, other than the fact that they're both standard canal boats that were transporting coal. So, yeah.
Were the canals dug by hand or by steam shovels?
I believe there was a bit of both, but if I remember correctly, the earlier versions were done by hand, and actually did involve a degree of migrant enslaved labor. Yeah. Yeah.
So the canal locks, it takes a long time to move boats through the locks. I'm wondering how many boats could go through in a day.
Yeah, I don't have the answers to that question. I believe that's covered in a different chapter. But yeah, you're effectively moving one boat at a time through a canal lock, which is why, as I mentioned, that's the narrowest part. So all of these boats are being designed based off of the lock, because if your boat doesn't fit in the lock, it's not going through the canal. Yeah.
It seems to me, looking at this, canal boats were really precursors to containers.
Yeah.
I think the guy's name was McLean or something like that, and they went through a transformation in terms of size, just as the canal boats did. Might be a great source for funding down the road, these companies that manufacture these, giving back to the nonprofit sector.
That would be really nice. And yeah, you're absolutely right. They are effectively a floating container. I like to think of them more as a floating semi-truck because of the work crew on board, but they are closer to a container than a semi-truck, I would say.
Why did the barge canal system put the previous system out of business? They were both on water and both transporting goods.
So they actually used large sections of the canal system for the barge canals.
Right.
And it has to do with, let me just go back here, it has to do with the size. So there was a period of time, as we saw, the Sloop Island canal boat was operating up until about 1915, right around the same time that the barge system is coming into play. And you probably could have fit 3 or 4 canal boats in one of these locks at one time. So, that is one factor. The other factor is, though, that they were, the barges were, self-propelled. They had engines on board at that time, because we're starting to shift from steam to gasoline, as our exhibit is. And gasoline doesn't take as much, the fuel for gasoline, right, does not take up as much space as steam does. So they're able to start being self-propelled. I'm going to go right here. You got it? Oh, nope, sorry. Yeah.
Taylor, you mentioned, I think it was the second expansion was sort of rushed because of the Erie Canal being built at the same time. And so it insinuated that there was kind of a competition there. I would assume that they were different markets, but what was at play?
So, there are different markets. It came after the final Erie Canal expansion, and because they really wanted to be able to capitalize on being able to send goods from the Champlain Valley to the Great Lakes, and they wanted to be able to bring stuff from the Great Lakes to the Champlain Valley. So they want that whole canal system to kind of be very similar. So there was a lot of pressure in New York, kind of from both sides, to really expand that. Yeah.
Is there any sort of database for people that lost their lives either in canal boat sinking or canal construction?
I'm not aware of any. That would be a very interesting undertaking for the future, though. I think that would actually be a really good endeavor because of how vital, canal boats were to the livelihoods of not only, families here in the Champlain Valley, but also on the Great Lakes.
Lake Champlain Chronicles is a great resource for anyone who would like a deeper dive into the history of the lake.
Great, yeah, that's a really good, Lake Champlain Chronicles, good to know, yeah, thank you.
I would assume that if they have more than one time together, and if one started to take on water, they had to have access points for an axe or something to cut the road. Yeah,
they definitely would have used whatever tools were available, either an axe or knife or anything, to cut the rope and sever whatever lines they needed to in a case of an emergency like that. And you got a question as well?
I was going to say, I'm sure you've heard the song about James Wakefield.
I don't think I have, actually. Really?
Oh, there's a wonderful song about James Wakefield saving the survivors.
Really?
The refrain goes, row, strong arms, row. And I heard it on a CD that I bought here at the Maritime Museum years and years ago.
Really? Okay, I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to go listen to that. Any more questions? Oh, yeah.
There is, I believe, is it 9 locks between Whitehall and Fort Edward?
That sounds right to me.
I researched it, a couple winters ago, but 9 sticks in my head. So they were all obviously not simultaneously expanded, but around the same period.
They were done piecemeal, so they would do one block at a time, and then the next one, and then the next one. Sometimes they'll do a couple at a time, but they never did the entire canal system all at once,
right.
Because it was too disruptive to the whole system. Yeah. And it was really, especially for the first expansion, it was really only done, and that's why it took so much longer. It was really only done as the locks in the prisons needed repair, which probably became a lot less after that 1846 law about the scow bow.
And do you have a record of when the expansions happened in regards to the the years?
I know there is a record. I don't know if we have it here, but I do know the record exists, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, on this page, it says the first canal expansion was 1858. Where on the previous page, it said the first expansion was 1835.
Let me, sorry.
So it said, started in 1835, about 12 years after opening the canal was.
Oh, yeah, so because, thank you, that's a good question. So because of how they started to do that expansion, like I said, they did it as repairs were needed. It was a lot slower. So it took a lot more time for the canal expansion to be completed enough for folks to start designing new ships, which really, that first kind of hint of that new class, of the 1862 class, started to come around 1858. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Taylor, what's the location of the LA Hall wreck site?
I would have to look into that one for you.
It's not one of the.
It's not a
reserve
reserve.
right?
No, it's not reserve wreck. Yeah. I believe it's too deep for that. Yeah.
Did I miss how many canal wrecks you've come across down in Lake Champlain?
I
heard
believe we have
a
over
lot.
150. Yeah, there's a lot. It
150,
makes
okay.
up, so the canal boats make up the vast majority of shipwrecks that we have in Lake Champlain because it was such a long period of our history, and also how susceptible they are to storms. We get pretty major storms, but they don't have a very deep keel or anything like that.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, they get pretty susceptible to the storms and sink.
Was there insurance coverage for loss on these boats?
Yeah, sort of. You know, it kind of would depend on if you could afford that, you know, insurance and things like that. You know, the profit margin on a lot of these canal boats was pretty narrow, and so it's just one of those things that you'd have to think about of, you know, do you want to take it or not? And there's all sorts of complications with, you know, insurance at that time. Of, you know, they'd be like, oh, the ship's too old, things like that, right? So it's definitely not like how it is today, I know, I'm sure.
In all the considerations of how to build these boats, why was seaworthiness not one of them?
Yeah, because the shape of the canal lock, they weren't very deep, right? You can see here the canal is only about 5 feet deep. So to carry that much weight and to really get that boxy shape, you're sacrificing that seaworthiness because you're losing that kind of, you know, that wine glass shape that is going to give you, you know, that point to the keel that will bring you that stability. Yeah.
So do you know if certain canal boats had a tendency to transport certain materials based on how they were built? Or was it just a catch-as-catch-can type of a thing? It might be coal one time and it might be marble the next or wood the next.
So I think it has more to do with not so much with the style of the boat, but the owner-operator of the boat, right?
Yeah.
So OG Lockers is a great example because it was owned by a brick manufacturing company, so it's only transporting, you know, brick.
Right.
But something like General Butler would probably have been transporting various different types of good, and just happened to be transporting marble that day.
So it's based on the connections of the boat owner or the captain of the boat, if you will? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Was there bidding among the canal boat owners like the TV show of, you know, long haul is bidding on the end?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was maybe something along the same lines. But it also might have been reputation based too, is another alternative of just you have a reputation of being a reliable, timely canal boat captain. Maybe they decide to go with you even though your prices might be higher than somebody else's.
When did the longshoremen ever get involved in this?
Not that I'm aware
Out
of.
of New York?
Yeah, I don't know.
Can't imagine not.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, any more questions? I think we have time for one or two more. You guys have been great. This has actually been really fantastic. I've enjoyed all of these questions. You definitely put me on the spot, and I enjoy it. No, it's great. Yeah, I think.
You mentioned approximately 150 shipwrecks
Mhm.
in Lake Champlain that are canal boats. In 1909, a wrecking firm removed vessels from Whitehall, and that total, most of them were canal boats, and that total was 20. That was over 1 year.
Yeah.
Real interesting story about that.
Just in Whitehall too. Yeah.
In Whitehall, so you can imagine, had they been all sunk in deep water,
Yeah.
there are some people who love the shipwrecks, you know, what the total might be for Lake Champlain.
Yeah. All right. I think there's one more question. This will be the last one I
So the
take.
question I have is there a database or a book that you know of that explains the building expansion of these canals? The reason why I say is, my wife has an ancestor who died 1835. All we know is that he was working on the canal. So I'm just curious what exactly the construction of these canals would have taken place that might have caused him to fall in the water or drown or...
Yeah. I mean, you know, you got to think the early 1810s. We definitely did not have labor laws like we do now, and you know, working situations were a lot more hazardous, a lot longer hours, a lot less pay, things like that. In terms of a book that describes that, I'm not very familiar with one that goes in depth. I do believe we talk about it in one of the, or two of the chapters for this book, but I haven't actually reviewed those chapters, so I don't know how in depth those authors go into.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that came down through the history on the family was that the canal boat overturned. Now, certainly, the shape of the boat, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
this basically disqualifies that family lore, if you will. I mean, for one of these to overturn, I mean, to sink is one thing, but to overturn, I mean, what almost be unheard of, I would think.
No, I think it could happen. I don't think it's that
If
unheard
it
of.
shifted and it overturned because of the load, because the load
Yeah.
shifted?
Yeah, I think that could happen. Or what? Do you know if it was a standard or a sailing canal boat?
No.
So I mean, it could have been. Yeah, I think it definitely could have happened. You know, these were not. They were pretty stable, but they're not the most stable.
I see. Okay.
Certain things. Yeah, I don't think it's
It's
impossible.
possible he got caught underneath the, whatever was falling on top of him and drowned as
Yeah.
a result.
Yeah, actually, I mean, that happened on the Isle of Mont canal sloop as well.
Oh.
Is that captain, and same with the Troy. Those, you know, those crew members also didn't survive because of similar circumstances.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.
This is a great turnout. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. If you have, where did I go? If you have any more questions, or I don't know why that happened, but if you have any more questions, my email is right there. It's taylorp@lcmm.org. Feel free to email me. I'll be more than happy to answer them. And yeah, we're only about